It's Christmas time. The time of year when it's busiest for parents, the time of year when it's most exciting for children. It can be the most stressful times for some, and it can be the greatest times for some. I went to a Christmas Mass yesterday, and the pastor told us a story. There was a man who was an art collector, and he sold his art as well. But he was very wealthy. He was well past being a millionaire. And he had a son. The son's mother had passed away a long time ago. And when the son graduated from high school, he had absolutely no interest in following his father's footsteps and being an art collector. What he wanted to do was something meaningful. So he enlisted in the army. And unfortunately, he never came home. About a year or so after he passed, the art collector was in his home, and there was a knock on the door. And he answered the door, and there stood a man in his early 20s, dressed in a nice suit. And the man said, "Hello, sir. I know you don't know me, but I served with your son. And I wanted you to know, I know you and your son didn't have the greatest relationship after your wife passed away, but I want you to know that your son was one of the greatest men I have ever met in my entire life. And every day he woke up and he pushed himself because he wanted to be meaningful, not just for the world, but for you." And he said, "Sir, your son died saving my life and 14 other men's lives. He died doing something meaningful. He died so that I could live, and so that all these other men could live and come home to their families." And he said, "So, sir, I know that you're an art collector, and I know that I'm not famous, and it's not anything comparable to any art that you have, but I painted a picture of your son for you, the way that I saw him every day." And the man gave the art collector this painting. And as he said, it was absolutely nothing professional. And the man started crying and immediately went into his family room. And up on top of the mantle in the family room, he had a $3 million painting hanging. It was his most prized painting. Now, sure, there's paintings out there that are worth more than $3 million, but this painting was the man's first painting that he ever curated. He took that painting off the wall, and he hung the painting of his son. Of course, it didn't look right. It didn't match. It didn't fit in with the multi-million dollars worth of paintings that the man had hanging in his house. But he didn't care. About a year later, the art collector passed away from old age. And in his will, it was specified that he wanted there to be an auction for all of his paintings. Now, obviously, being the high caliber art collector that he was, a lot of people around the world knew about him and knew the kinds of paintings that he had. So when it came time to have this auction, his front door was flooded with people. They all wanted to join. They all wanted to get in. So on the day of the auction, everybody's walking around the house and they're all looking at the paintings. They're all deciding which ones they want to try and bid on and win. They're all admiring the $1 million worth of paintings in this house. A few of them saw the painting of the man's son, and they all kind of scratched their heads and didn't really understand why it was there. So then the auction started, and the auctioneer said, "First up on the block is this painting right here." And it was the painting of the man's son. And everybody looked at each other. They were all confused. They all said, "What's going on? Is this a joke?" Like, get to the real stuff. Get to the reason why we're here. And the auctioneer opened the bid for the painting of the man's son at $500, and nobody would take it. He lowered it to $400, $300, $200. Nobody wanted it. The auctioneer looked up to the crowd and said, "Is there anybody at all in this building that wants to buy this painting right here?" And way in the back of the room, a man was simply walking through. He wasn't dressed nice like all the other guests. He was wearing a t-shirt. He was wearing dirty jeans. But he stopped and he raised his hand. And he said, "Sir, I'll buy that painting from you. But unfortunately, I only have $10 to my name. But if you will take it, I will give it to you for that painting right there." And the auctioneer looked around and nobody else was raising their hands. So he sold the painting to this man. A gentleman walked up to the man and said, "Well, surely you don't fit in with us. What is going on exactly?" And the guy who had just purchased this painting looked at him and said, "Well, I've been the gardener here at this house for the last 35 years. He said, "I raised that boy with his parents that's in that painting right there. I loved that family. I loved that boy. I loved his father and his mother. And I just couldn't let the opportunity go by. No matter what my situation is, I had to do something." A few minutes later, after the crowd kind of quieted down after this nonsense that they thought was going on, the auctioneer looked up and said, "Okay, thank you all very much for coming today. The auction is now over." And of course, as you can imagine, the crowd got a little intense. What's going on? We're here to buy all these paintings in this house, and now you're telling us the auction is over? The only thing that the auctioneer sold was the unprofessional painting of the man's son. And the auctioneer looked at the crowd and he said, "Well, folks, I have a note right here directly from the old man's will. And it says, the very first item to go up for auction is the picture of my son." And he said, "Whoever purchases this painting of my son inherits my house, inherits my fortune, inherits all of the paintings that are in the house. The person who who purchases the painting of my son, who I loved very much, gets everything of mine. That tells a story of what Christmas is really about. There's two things that stick out right there. Number one is selflessness. Because the man could have said, sell all of my paintings, give the money to this person or this place or this company or this nonprofit organization or anything. And at the same time, it's selflessness on the gardener's part, because he only had $10 to his name.
You guys are in for a treat tonight.
But he just couldn't let
Look at where we are.
a family piece like that not be saved.
Today?
And the second thing
It is
that
Christmas
this story
time in Brooklyn.
explains is
Christmas
without
time
a
in
doubt
Brooklyn.
100% the most
You
important
wouldn't think of Brooklyn, New York as being
part of the holiday
the
season.
epicot of Christmas lights, but
It's not about gifts.
it is.
It's not about money. It's not about how much you spent on gifts or
Certainly
how
is.
many gifts you got your children or your spouses or your family.
Ah, look, man.
It's not about the gifts. It's simply about family. It's about family and friends and love. And doing everything you can while being selfless to be with your family and friends, to show your family and friends how much you love them. Whether you buy them a $5 gift or a $500 gift, that doesn't matter. It's about family and friends and love. And that's it.